I was in my small ride hailing car, a blue Corolla with a stubborn fuel gauge, inching forward and counting how many Oya move the last mile officer had already shouted. That was when I saw her. She stood by the railing of the bridge in a plain white dress, barefoot, shivering but calm. Her hair was wet and long, sticking to her shoulders like black ropes. Around her wrist was a thin string with three cowries, shining as if the rain was not touching them. People were passing and pretending not to notice. Lagos people mind their business when the things look bigger than them. Me, I slowed down. Something in my chest said, Chike, stop. Madam, enter motor, I said, reaching across to open the passenger door. She looked into my eyes like she was searching for someone she lost long ago. Then, slowly, she climbed in. She smelled like fresh rain and mango leaves. Not perfume, not body cream. Something natural, sweet, and clean. Thank you, she said in a small voice. Do you know anywhere quiet in Lagos? I laughed a small Lagos laugh. Quiet? In this city? Maybe in the cemetery. She smiled a little, like my joke was fresh water touching dry ground. My name is Chike, I added. Yours? Morayo, she said, watching the water like the lagoon was a TV screen and her favorite program was on. We crawled off the bridge and I asked where to drop her. She paused. Take me to wherever your heart trusts, she said. The sentence sounded strange, but it felt right. My heart trusted Makoko Water Community because my friend Shade's mother sold fish there and because the water people always treated me well when I came to buy fresh tilapia. So I drove to the wooden shacks standing on stilts, where canoes moved like slow lizards and smoke from frying fish painted the air. Mama Shade looked at Morayo and crossed herself, even though she was Muslim. Who be this fine water picking? She asked, eyes round. She be from here? I was about to form story when a little boy in a canoe shouted, Auntie, your hand chain dey shine for water. We all looked. The three cowries on her wrist were dancing, bright like small moons. The boy wasn't lying. We guided her inside. I bought her hot pap and akara. She took one small sip and sighed like the pap entered her soul. The rain kept beating the roof, and the lagoon started rising higher than I had seen in years. People talked in low voices about how the big men were dredging the coast too much, how new estates ate the sand and pushed the water back until it had nowhere to go. Mama Shade shook her head. When you push a mother, she go push back, she said, staring at the lagoon like it could hear. Morayo sat beside the window and watched boats sliding by. Every time she hummed a tune I didn't know, the rain would reduce because it wanted to hear her. When she hummed louder, the smoke from the frying pans turned sweet, like roasted coconuts. The old fishermen looked at her with the respect you reserve for a chief or for a mystery. One old man, Baba Faitai, greeted her with his forehead touching the ground, then came to me and whispered, Protect her. This one is not small thing. Protect who? From what? I didn't know, but my chest agreed with him. I told Morayo I would take her home later, and she nodded. I don't have a home yet, she said softly. I came here because the city called me. I must find something that belongs to me, something that was stolen. Who stole it? I asked. Her eyes went to the water again. A man who calls the earth land that he can buy, and calls the water only a mirror for his tall houses. She said it like a proverb. Lagos was full of those men. Which one exactly? I didn't ask, because something in her voice told me to be patient. That evening, when the rain finally rested, I drove her to my small rented room in Yaba. Don't judge me. Lagos can turn a good Samaritan into a host by force. I gave her my bed and I slept on the floor with my old wrapper, feeling like one useless hero in film. In the night, I woke up to the sound of water flowing even though the tap was not on and the window was closed. I sat up. The room was dry. Morayo was sitting on the floor, palms open, eyes closed, humming that same tune. Her cowries were glowing faintly, and I saw water ripples moving under her hands even though there was no bowl. I blinked hard. When I opened my eyes, everything was normal again. She lay back and slept peacefully. In the morning, Lagos put on a noisy wig. Downfall buses shouted yaba yaba. People argued with conductors about change. My phone vibrated with a ride request to Ikoyi from one client, Tunde, a tech bro I drove often. He was always kind and tipped well, so I accepted. I told Morayo to ride along. It is safer close to you, she said, like she had seen the plan ahead of me. We picked Tunde at a cafe with air conditioning, strong enough to freeze anger. He wore white sneakers that did not know dust, and a smile that made you ask for Wi-Fi. He saw Morayo and blinked. Wow, he said full word. Your friend is. Lagos is doing well, oh. Good morning, she said. He stared at the cowries on her wrist and swallowed like he remembered something. During the ride, Tunde talked about a new real estate project his father's partner was working on. Luxury apartments resting on reclaimed land, infinity pools looking into the Atlantic, private marinas, the kind of place where the gate eats your Range Rover gently before opening. The name of the developer dropped like a stone in a quiet room. Chief Kolapo Adeniran. I didn't show my surprise. Everybody in Lagos knew Chief Adeniran, the man who could buy traffic and sell it back to you. He owned estates, media, a football club, even a church rumor said he funded quietly but never attended. He was also the man many fishermen blamed for choking the shoreline with sand. He had commercials that said, "We are building the future," with drone shots of blue water moving away like a shy bridge. When Tunde entered his office, Morayo squeezed my hand. Her fingers were cool, like she had just washed them inside fresh river. The name is said, she whispered. That is the man, she explained in a slow way, like each word carried weight. Something ancient belonged to our family, to our mothers and their mothers. She said, a small calabash sealed with cowries, a sacred thing that holds peace for water and land. She said it in very simple language, but my skin rose like a crowd standing. The calabash was stolen years ago by a sailor who wanted favor and sold it up the ladder until it reached the man who called the earth land he could buy. Without the calabash with its cowries intact, the water had started to misbehave. Tides changed, fishes ran away, mangroves suffered, and the city found sneaky floods inside streets that never flooded before. She came to Lagos to find it. I swallowed, because my late father had been a sailor in his young days before he settled in Onitsha and later in Lagos. He used to tell me strange stories of a night on the lagoon that smelled like palm wine and fear. He died when I was in school. I never pushed the stories. Now my mind ran like Okada. Could the thief be? No. I pushed the thought away. Lagos teaches you how to dodge pain. That afternoon, something happened I cannot forget. We had parked under a tree by the lagoon's edge near Third Bridge to eat roasted corn and pear from a roadside woman. A child slipped from a slippery step beside the water and fell in with a small splash that was big in fear. People screamed and rushed, but before my legs even moved, Morayo was already there. She didn't jump, she just stepped. The water held her like a faithful stool. She bent forward, and the boy rose to her hands, as if the lagoon changed its mind and returned what it took. People shouted, Jesus! People shouted, Yemoja! People shouted anything their mouth found. Morayo handed the boy to his mother, then quietly walked back to me like she only picked a fruit from a low branch. Phones were recording. Lagos loves a show. By evening, the video had already roamed the city. My friend Ifoma, a journalist with YouTube Fire, called me in a voice that can set a room on alert. Chike, who is the water angel in your car? People are calling her River Bride. Is she your girlfriend? Should I come and interview her? Oh, you're not dummy. I looked at Morayo. She shook her head. Not yet, she whispered. The man will see me if I shout. Let him not know the wind is blowing behind him. But the man saw anyway. The next day, a shining black SUV with hidden plates followed us for hours. Another day, two men in suits with earpieces came to my small compound, asking calm questions with eyes that were not calm. One of them smiled at me too much, like a warning. They were polite in that Lagos rich man politeness way, which sounds like please but smells like must. After they left, my neighbor who drove a keke pulled me aside to gist me like a spy. Chike, na chief people. I sabi one of them from the club where they carry passengers. No let them collect the girl. Oh. Lagos showed us many faces in those weeks. Some people washed their faces in bowls for Morayo to bless. Some put money in her hand as if they were paying tax to the sea. A group of women brought live catfish and cola to thank her for saving their sons from water. Some influencers called her fake water witch. A pastor with a big church did a sermon titled There is Only One Living Water and then sent his assistant to invite her to testify. She said no. The pastor then said in another sermon that darkness refuses light and continued wearing white suits with gold buttons. I kept quiet because Lagos knows how to come for people who talk too much. At night, Morayo would tell me about the river world, not with BB grammar, but gentle and simple, like a bedtime story for a city that never sleeps. She said water has a memory stronger than melter. She said when we cry, our tears send messages to water. She said if the city forgot its promises to the lagoons and mangroves, water would knock gently first, then knock hard. I listened like a child, and I loved her like a man. That love was not sudden. It grew like a hidden flower inside me, opening small, small every time she laughed at my silly joke. Every time she hummed and the hair cooled. Every time she looked at people's pain with soft eyes. One night, after NEPA carried lights and the generator of the next compound was shouting like a proud goat, we sat on my balcony. The street below was full of wake, suya, fried yam, a baby crying somewhere, a radio playing juju music too loud. She looked at me long enough to touch my heart. Chike, she said, if water marries land, who is their child? City, I answered, smiling. Lagos. She smiled back. You will stand with me when the city shouts. I will stand, I said. And I meant it, even though I didn't know the prize. The man finally stepped into our path when we were not looking. He invited many influencers, artists, actors, footballers, church leaders, traditional chiefs, and politicians to a grand gala at his newest waterfront hotel. We called it Night of Blue Gold to celebrate the power of the ocean and the future of Lagos. The city likes shiny things, so they came. Ifeoma got a press pass and told us, let us go there and scatter sense. I wore my best shirt and borrowed a blazer from my neighbor. Morayo wore a simple blue dress that looked like it was sewn from twilight. We walked through security that smelled of money and new construction dust. The hall was cold with AC and warm with pride. Pictures of ocean waves, yachts, and tall glass buildings floated on big screens. The floor shone like a calm lake. The man himself stood on stage later, tall and neat, his agbada white like he had agreements with laundry agents. His voice deep and sweet, as if he had swallowed a radio. Chief Kolakbo Adeniran smiled his signature smile, the one that makes cameras respect him. He said many fine words. He said he loved Lagos with his whole heart, that he was protecting the coastline from erosion, that he was creating jobs, that when you see sand moving into the ocean, it is not greed, it is vision. People clapped, cameras flashed. He lifted a small item from a crystal box, a round gourd sealed with cowries around the mouth, polished until it could show your face. I found this traditional item during one of our shoreline cleanups, he said. We respect our culture, so we will display it in our museum. He smiled like the caretaker of goodness. A cold wind moved through the hall, but the doors were closed. The flowers on the tables trembled, even the plastic ones. My heart stopped like traffic at Ojuelegba. The calabash looked exactly like what lived in Morayo's words. The cowries glowed in the stage light, and it felt like the hall was inside a shell held to someone's ear. I looked at Morayo. Her eyes were wet, not with tears, but with something older, like the lagoon had come to sit in them. She stood up. Ifeoma squeezed my knee under the table like, this is it, oh. The band on stage, a high life group, switched without warning to drums that sounded like festival. People began to dance because Lagos is a dancer even when the fire alarm is ringing. But a different dance was rising. Moriah walked towards the stage, not running, not flying, just walking like a queen who knew her path. People turned, lights leaned towards her by themselves. Chief saw her coming and his smile twitched a little but stayed. The two men with earpieces shifted position like cats ready to pounce. I stood too, ready to run mad if they touched her. Then a small miracle happened. The giant chandelier above the room shook like it remembered the sea. A tiny drop of water fell from it onto the stage. It landed on the cowries. The whole hall smelled of the ocean in a way that made rich people think of holiday and poor people think of home. The drum changed again without the drummer's permission. The cowries on Mariah's wrist answered with light. She reached the edge of the stage. Chief's eyes were sweet and hard. Up close, I saw something like fear sitting behind the sweetness. She spoke in a voice the microphones did not catch, but the body felt. That belongs to my mothers, she said. Chief smiled. Our museum will take care of it. The security men moved. The band stopped. The hall held its breath. Ifoma, bold as pepper soup, stepped forward with her camera high. Sir, people should know the truth, she said. Where did you get it? Chief laughed casually. From the water, madam. Lagos belongs to all of us. Then return what you took, Morayo said, quiet as night air. Something in his face changed, a shadow passing across a bright billboard. Who are you? He whispered. Daughter of the river, friend of this city, she replied, and it's warning. Chief waved his hand at the men in suits. Take them out. The men moved, but the floor under them went soft like fresh sand. They stumbled. People screamed. Then everything went past. The ceiling blinked with lights. Water ran out from the edges of the room as if the AC was connected to the Atlantic. It was not flood, it was a visitation. Clear water, gentle but firm, wrapped around the stage like a scarf. Chief grabbed the calabash tighter. His white agbada caught a bloom of blue at the edges, like the ocean had written its name on him. Give it, Morayo said. There was no anger in her voice, only a tired love. Chief held it closer to his chest. Do you know how much this city cost me? He asked. Do you know how much I built with my breath? If I let this go, I lose power. The power is not yours, she said. You borrowed it with a lie. He laughed, but it shook. I don't lose, he said finally. And then he did something none of us expected. He threw the calabash to one of his men and ran. The man caught it and bolted through a side exit. Instantly, the water in the hall pulled back like a tide, obeying a command. I chased without thinking. Ifoma ran too, small but fast, a camera steady like a third eye. We burst into a corridor and then into a service stairwell that smelled of cleaning chemicals and fear. The man pounded down the stairs. I chased him with my whole body. My knees begged me to stop. I refused. Ifoma shouted, Chike, if I fall, hold my wig. We burst out at the back of the hotel, into night air that hummed like a giant mosquito. The lagoon stretched dark and patient, whispering the kind of secrets that are older than kings. The man reached the jetty and jumped into a speedboat. The engine coughed to life. Another man united the rope. Go! He shouted. I reached the edge as the boat moved. I jumped. In that flying moment, I asked myself a simple Lagos question. Are you mad? My hand caught the back of the boat. My shoulder screamed. Ifoma screamed my full name like a mother. I pulled myself up and rolled inside like a bag of gari. The man raised a short baton. I grabbed it and hit his hand. The calabash almost fell. He grabbed it again and we wrestled as the boat raced into the lagoon. Lagos lights shrinking behind us like a party you left too early. Suddenly, the water ahead lifted, not like a wall, but like a breath. The boat slowed without touching the throttle. A light glowed somewhere, not from the city, not from the moon. The man looked around like a child lost in a big market. From the water rose many small lights, cowries shining like stars at ankle level. The man whispered a prayer that forgot to call any name. Then, without anybody touching him, he slept. I don't know how else to say it. His head dropped, his hands relaxed, and the calabash rolled away from him into my lap like it had been trying to come home all along. A soft humming filled the air, the same melody from my room, the song that makes wind listen. I turned. Morayo was standing on the water, walking towards the boat, the lagoon carrying her like a proud father. She stepped in as if stepping onto her own doorstep. The calabash in my hands felt warm, like a living fruit. She placed her palm on it, and every cowrie flashed once, then rested. The boat turned by itself and began to drift back to shore, gentle like a guided child. We came back to a different crowd. People were out on the hotel deck, phones up, faces bright with fear and excitement. Some had kneeling hearts, some had calculating eyes. Ifoma was there, wet from tears of spray or boats, filming and whispering. I am seeing this with my eyes. Chief was gone. Someone said he had entered a helicopter. Someone else said it was in the penthouse. Lagos always has two stories for the same event. NEPA chose that moment to take light. The hotel generators started after a confused pause. In that pause, the lagoon showed its voice. Waves rolled, not big enough to destroy, but big enough to warn. People hugged strangers. The city listened. Morayo raised the calabash and spoke, not to the crowd, but to the water, to the sand, to the mangroves near and far. I return what was taken, she said. Let peace return to this coastline. Let the children of the water and the children of land share without fighting. The cowries clicked softly, like small applauses from spirits. A cool breeze blew through us, so clean, so full of salt and promise that people started crying without knowing why. Then the prize came. Power is not free. She turned to me and touched my cheek with fingers that shook. Chike, she said, voice almost breaking. The city will be safe if one human agrees to hold the bridge between water and land for 7 years. It is not death. It is a long night without your voice in the markets of men. Will you stand with me as you promised? My mouth went dry. 7 years is not a small thing. But truly, what was my life if Lagos sank in shame? If Makoko vanished? If fishermen became beggars? If the city lost her laughter? I remembered my father's half-finished story, the fear and palm wine. Maybe my blood had been walking to this moment from the day he told it. I nodded. I will stand, I said, and my voice did not shake. She kissed my forehead. It felt like cool water after hot sun. She looked at Ifoma. Tell the city to remember what fed it, she said. Tell them to plant mangroves as if they are palms for future weddings. Tell them to stop pushing the mother who pushed them into life. Ifoma, for once, had no grammar. She just nodded with tears running like small creeks. We went to the water's edge. She held the calabash with both hands. I put my hand on top. The lagoon rose around our ankles, then our knees. It wasn't cold. It was like walking into a familiar room you forgot you loved. I heard voices, but not human ones. Voices like shells rolling, like sand dancing, like fish praying, like old women laughing after a long story. The city behind us hummed. Something inside me slipped away. Not my life, but my noise. The part of me that shouts in traffic. It left gently. I turned to look at Ifoma one last time. She raised her camera, and I saw the lens glistening like it was crying. The water closed. I will not pretend to know how to explain the next part. It was like being awake inside a dream where you are a bridge, a whisper, a radio station only birds and waves can tune to. I did not drown. I did not breathe air. I simply existed in a place where existence feels like music. I watched 7 seasons pass in Lagos without counting days. I saw the storms come and go, not with anger now, but with purpose. I watched fishermen return smiling with baskets that stopped being shy. I saw women plant young mangroves in lines, their feet in the mud, their laughter mixing with the cries of gulls. I saw children learning in school that water is not an enemy, but a relation. I watched the city argue in council halls about building and balance. I saw posters that said, "Protect our coastline" in bright paint. I watched and I hummed and I stood between. Sometimes I saw Ifoma on screens held by people in boats above me. She became a voice the city respected, still bold, still pepper, but wiser, telling stories about water and land, clapping at good deeds, dragging bad ones, carrying Lagos like a baby in a wrapper on her back. She married a quiet engineer who specialized in floor designs and wore brown shoes. Sometimes, when she stood by the lagoon at dusk, she would whisper my name into the water with that old stubborn love, and I would answer with a small ripple that touched her toes. She would smile and say, "I know, I know." I never saw Chief on the water. That is its own story. News carried that he traveled more, smiling less. His empire changed hands and faces. Some of his projects became parks instead of towers. Some of his towers became schools in truth, not on paper. People said different things about why, but Lagos knew. Big men learn lessons too, only their classrooms are expensive. On the last night of the seventh year, the lagoon was calm like a sleeping child. The moon sat low. The city glowed like a basket of fireflies. I felt a loosening, like a rope cut without pain. The calabash sang without sound. The water under me lifted and carried me to shore, beside a small new mangrove garden near Lekki. I stood, wet but warm, and took my first breath of Lagos air in 7 years. It tasted like pepper soup after fasting. People were not there, only a girl, maybe 10 years old, sitting on a wooden stool with a notebook on her knees, drawing mangrove roots in careful lines. She had short hair, bright eyes, and a small cowrie on a chain at her neck. She looked up and smiled like she had been waiting. "Good evening, uncle," she said. "My mama said I would meet a friend tonight." "Where is your mama?" I asked, my voice rusty like a door that had not opened since last Harmattan. "She is coming," the girl said. "She likes to walk slowly when she is happy." I sat beside her and wondered what to ask first. 7 years had stretched and snapped, and everything felt new and familiar at the same time. I wanted to run to Yaba, to smell my street, to laugh with my neighbors, to see if my blue Corolla was finally in car heaven. I wanted to go to Makoko and buy fish from Mama Shade, to hug Baba Fatai if he was still with us. I wanted to look for Ifoma and say, "You did well." I wanted to find Morayo and say nothing, only hold our hands and let our silence speak. My heart beat like a drum calling a village to gather. Footsteps came soft as foam. She appeared between the new mangroves, wearing a simple white dress again, older in a way that made her more beautiful, like a song that learned extra notes. Her hair was in braids tied back. The cowries on her wrist were the same, only calmer. The moon leaned towards her. She looked at me the way water looks at the shore it loves. My knees almost failed me. Lagos noise was far away, but my heart was shouting, "Eh, eh." "You kept your promise," she said. "You kept the city," I replied. She nodded. The girl between us smiled, simple and bright, drew another route and hummed the tune I knew too well. "This is Adaora," Morayo said. She's, how will I say it? She's Lagos child. Many mothers, many fathers. She belongs to this place. The girl looked at me with mischief. "Uncle, you look like you want to eat suya now." I laughed until tears came, because children always know the right thing to say. We sat, the three of us, and watched the tide move like a sleeping chest. We listened to frogs tuning their instruments. Wind ran fingers through the young mangroves. The city hummed like a big generator, but softer now, like it had learned to respect bedtime a little. I turned to ask a question that had haunted me through the 7 years. My father, the sailor, was he the one who started this long journey by stealing the calabash? Before my mouth opened, Morayo touched my cheek. Yes, she said quietly, not in anger. He did it in fear and ignorance. He paid with a heavy heart for the rest of his life. The river forgave him because he knew how to forgive himself. And you? You have made a different story with the same blood. I closed my eyes. The shame I did not know I was carrying washed away like dust in first rain. I opened my eyes and held her gaze. What now? I asked. Now, she said, we eat suya. We stood and laughed and walked towards the small road where a man was fanning coals. Lagos is always ready with food for any mood. As we reached the lights, a small crowd gathered because Lagos people don't miss gist. A woman selling puff-puff adjusted her wrapper and whispered, is that not the river bride? A boy with a bicycle said, Auntie, sing that song again. A young man with earpiece asked, is this content? I smiled. The city was still the city. We sat on a low bench. The suya man asked if we wanted pepper. We want life, I told him. He sprinkled enough to make a spirit sneeze. We ate and moaned and laughed like people who found home. Adara dipped suya in pepper and made a face like a small cat drinking milk that bites. She began to tell us about her school project on mangroves, how they hold soil and fight flood, how they are like grandmothers with many arms. She spoke in simple words that tasted like future. People around listened and nodded and filmed and learned. It was then the night broke in half. A siren wailed from the main road, sharp and arrogant. SUVs with dark windows rolled towards us and stopped. Men stepped out first, suits, earpieces, same style as before with a new face. Then a woman stepped out, tall, fine, sharp like knife, but shining like gold. She wore a coral necklace and a silk wrapper, city and tradition stitched together. Cameras clicked because cameras always know where money stands. Behind her, a man stepped out, older, familiar, the face I had seen on billboards, on shaking screens in flood seasons, on the stage holding what was not his, Chief Kolapo Adeniran. Hair whiter now, agbada still white, eyes still sweet and hard. He stood beside a tall woman like a shadow beside a new building. The woman walked straight to us with a smile that commanded answers. The crowd shifted, Lagos making room for a bigger gist. Good evening, she said, voice like cold glass. I am Governor Adenike Adeniran. The crowd breathed in one long hiss. You know Lagos, by morning a rumor, by night a reality. She continued, I have been looking for you, River Bride. Morayo's face was calm, almost kind. For 7 years, the city looked back to the water and found respect. She said, why are you looking for me tonight? The governor nodded. Because we are ready to sign a marriage our fathers refused to sign openly. Land and water, city and coast. We want you to witness it. And you, she faced me with a gaze that read my name off my soul. You will be the registrar. You have already held the pen for 7 years. People clapped without knowing why their hands moved. The governor turned to the chief. Baba, come forward, she said. Not daddy, not father. Baba, respect with distance. He walked slowly, pride and regret fighting for space on his face. He bowed to Morayo. He looked at me long like he was searching for mercy. Then he did something I did not expect. He knelt. The city took a picture with its many eyes. He said, I am sorry. Simple, steady, not for cameras. You can always tell the difference. I spent years naming greed as vision. I was wrong. The night exhaled. For a single heartbeat, Lagos went quiet, completely. Then, from the water, a gentle wave rolled and touched his knees, not to knock him, but to accept. Morayo nodded. Return what belongs to the commons, she said. Protect what you almost buried, and keep your word when the city is not watching. He stood, a smaller man, a better man, maybe. The governor raised a rolled document. This is the Coast Covenant, she announced, a law to guard our mangroves, to respect tidal zones, to build with wisdom. We will sign it by the water, not in a closed office, and River Bride will be our witness. People cheered like a new Super Eagles goal. The Suya man raised his knife like a trophy. A boy beat a plastic bucket like a drum. Ifoma appeared from nowhere, camera raised, tears in her smile. Chike, she whispered, you see your life? We went to the water's edge again, under the gentle moon. The governor signed, the chief signed. Morayo pressed a cowrie to the paper. The ink glowed for a second. I signed last. My hand steady like I had been practicing in the dark. Adara clapped like a small bell. The lagoon made a happy sound that only those who have listened to sorrow can hear. The crowd started to sing. The governor turned to address them, but a sudden wind lifted from the water, playful first, then urgent. We looked at the lagoon. It was pulling back, far, far, like it wanted to show us its floor. People shouted, what is happening? Is it tsunami? Jesus, Shango. The water retreated so quickly that fish flopped in wet mud, shining like dropped coins. The moonlight poured into the empty bed of the lagoon, revealing ridges and channels like ribs. The city held its breath. Then we saw it. A long dark line rose from the exposed lagoon floor, shining slowly like something polishing itself. It was a road, not asphalt, not sand, not coral. Something between stone and shell, smooth and curved, stretching from our feet out towards the middle of the lagoon, then turning towards the island, then further, like a serpent that decided to be a bridge. People screamed and laughed. Some ran forward, some backward. The governor whispered, what is this? But nobody had a name. The road looked new and ancient at the same time, a gift pulled from a secret drawer. Mariah's face lit with a surprise I had not seen on it before. The old part, she said softly. The one our mothers used when the world was young. She looked at me, eyes wide with joy and warning. Chike, do not step. Too late. The chief had already stepped, one eager foot on the shining surface. It held him like a promise. He took another, then another, laughing like a boy. The crowd shouted in mixed fear and pride. The governor called, Papa, come back. He turned, smiling, raised his hands like a man who just found favor for free. Then the road moved. It tilted, gently like a tray correcting a spill. The chief slid forward a little. He laughed again, trying to find balance. Then it tilted the other way, and he slipped, and the road carried him. Not fast, not cruel, just carried like a conveyor belt designed by a patient God. He tried to run back, but running forward was what the path wanted. The crowd shouting became one sound, full and helpless. The governor ran towards him, but guards held her, begging. The road led the chief to the middle of the lagoon, where the water had pulled back and was waiting like a mother with arms open. He stopped, finally, on a small round platform that rose from the path like a step. He stood there, breathing hard, chest heaving, pride and fear mixing like oil and water. He looked at us, then at the water, then at the moon. He shouted, voice breaking, I am sorry. The lagoon answered with a sound no human mouth can make. The platform lowered. Water rolled in one fast curve and covered him, swallowed him, then spread smooth as silk. The road shone once, a pale blue like early morning, and then the lagoon rushed back to its place with a sound like a city sign after holding tears too long. In seconds, the path was gone, as if the road had been a dream the water used to make a point. Silence put its hand over Lagos' mouth. Even the generators forgot their job. The governor stood shaking, knuckles white around the road covenant. Adara held Murayo's hand until both their knuckles turned the color of shells. People dropped to their knees. Some wailed, some prayed. Some stood with mouths open like they wanted to swallow the night and keep it for telling their children's children. I stood still, hearing my heart drum. Mariah's face was wet, and for the first time since I knew her, I saw something like anger. Not hot anger, but deep, old, careful anger. Water forgets slow, she said, voice low. It forgives slower than we want and faster than we deserve. Tonight, it shows its own weakness. The governor swallowed her grief like a stone. She turned to us with eyes that had seen a crown fall into a river. She lifted the covenant with both hands. We will still keep our word, she said, voice strong and breaking together. Even more now. The crowd answered with a row that sounded like a promise and a funeral and a birth at the same time. Somewhere in a hotel room, a TV shouted football. Somewhere a baby started crying and then laughed. The city exhaled and inhaled, learned and unlearned, all in one night. People would call it many names later: the night the lagoon walked, the bride's road, the blue belt, the chief's crossing. WhatsApp statuses would carry it in small videos. Some would doubt, some would swear, some would build new lies around the truth. But those of us there knew. Lagos had taken a vow, and the water had signed it with a handwriting nobody could forge. We stood until dawn colored the sky like new cloth. Morayo turned to me. Will you come home with me? She asked. Home where? I asked gently. She smiled, tired and bright. Here, she said, always here, with the people, with the stories. Sometimes in water, sometimes on land. We will not go far, we will go deep. I looked at the city stretching like a cat waking up. I looked at Adara, who was drawing the sunrise now with quick lines. I looked at Ifoma, who had captured grief and promise and was sending it into many phones with a caption that simply said, Remember. I looked at the governor who was hugging the covenant like a child holding a school prize and a new burden. I took Mariah's hand. It was cool and steady, river and rock. I'm already home, I said. That was when Adara tugged my shirt and whispered, Uncle, see. She pointed to the waterline. Small white things were washing up with the gentle waves. We walked closer. Cowries, hundreds of them. They lay on the sand like stars falling into the day. People bent to pick them, then hesitated, as if they were touching a gift with rose. Morayo nodded. Take one, she said to the crowd, and remember tonight, but do not sell it. It is not for money, it is for memory. People picked one each, careful, respectful, like they were shaking hands with the sea. I picked one too. It was warm. Later that day, the governor's office released a statement that was half law, half poem. Work stopped at certain sites. New planting began at many shores. Fishermen returned to old routes with new wisdom. A billboard went up a week later near the bridge where I first saw her. It showed a simple mangrove drawing and the words, Love your mother, Lagos. People took selfies with it. Sakpa still held many throats in the city, but at least now the city had numbers to fight floods that did not lie. Housewives argued with engineers in town halls. Area boys joined coastal cleanups because Ifoma made it cool with a challenge that gave out free sneakers. At night, sometimes, when the moon is a small smile and the wind is a rumor, you can stand by the lagoon and hear a low humming, a tune that calms bus conductors and makes babies smile in their sleep. They say it is the river bride singing to her child, the city. But that is not the end. Months later, on an ordinary Tuesday, when traffic was doing traffic and NEPA had decided that light is to be treated like a rare visitor, I was driving along the bridge again, the same place where I first saw her. The lagoon below was beautiful, pretending innocence like a cat that just broke a plate. I was thinking of Amala and Begiri and where to find the sweetest one on the island when I saw a billboard that made my hand shake on the steering. It was a political poster, bright and simple. The face on it was Adara's, older by maybe 10 years, but the eyes were the same, bright and stubborn. The words under the picture said, Adara Chike Murayo, Mayor for Lagos Island, let the city breathe. My car almost climbed the railing. I parked and stared and laughed and cried together like a madman. People passed, saw me pointing like an evangelist, and looked up too. Some shrugged because Lagos sees too much to be easily surprised. But I stood there with my whole spirit, turning like a new plant towards light. Then I noticed the tiniest detail that made my skin rise. In the lower corner of the poster, near the code for donations and the short slogan, was a logo. Three small cowries in a circle. They were not printed flat. They were shining, really shining, like the first time I saw them on her wrist. I blinked. They kept shining. A small boy beside me whispered, "Uncle, is that thing shining?" I nodded without knowing which language to use. And that night, when I told Morayo, she did not look surprised. She only smiled the kind of smile that belongs to people who know tomorrow and still enjoy today. "You thought the story ended at the lagoon?" she said. "But Lagos doesn't end. It continues like water." The city slept and woke, argued and danced, sinned and repented, ate and built and prayed and loved. And sometimes, when nobody is watching, when the street lights flicker like shy stars and the water is whispering like old melody, a thin path appears for a heartbeat over the lagoon, shining like a promise kept. People say it is a trick of moonlight. People say it is a reflection from some new building. People say many things. But those of us who were there on the night the lagoon walked just hold our carries, listen and smile. Because we know the truth that Lagos will deny in daylight but admit in her sleep. The river goddess came to Lagos City, fell in love, signed a covenant, took a life, gave a future, and left a road that appears only to those who are ready to keep their word. And the most scandalous part, the part that keeps the city talking over pepper soup for hours, the part that makes you lean in and whisper, "Oh boy." It is not the night the chief vanished into water. It is not the glowing cowries. It is not even the 7 years a man lived as a bridge. It is this. Every election season now, when posters rise like weeds and promises fall like rain, some politicians go to the lagoon at midnight to whisper into the dark, thinking they are alone. They always leave with wet shoes and a small cowrie in their pockets. Some wake up in the next morning and change their manifestos to include the coast and the poor. Some throw the cowrie away and forget. But every single one of them, before sleep takes their eyes that night, hears a humming they cannot explain. A tune that follows them into dreams and reminds them that Lagos is not only land. And sometimes they wake with tears on their cheeks, not knowing if they are their own tears or borrowed water. So if one day you are walking by the lagoon and you hear that song, don't be afraid. Pause, put your hand in your pocket and touch your carry if you have one. Tell the city a soft promise and keep it. And if you see a small girl with bright eyes drawing mangroves on a bench, greet her well. She might be writing another covenant with crayons. Because in Lagos now, secrets do not hide in dark rooms, they hide in plain water. And when they rise like a road nobody expected, leading into the center of everything and then vanishing again, leaving you with a story that tastes like salt and love and pepper and truth, and a shock that refuses to leave your mouth long after your plate is empty. The end. Please kindly leave a comment, like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.